Hi everyone, thank you for taking a look at this Cinema 4D tutorial. I basically learned everything I know about C4D by watching all the free tutorials on YouTube, Vimeo, Grayscale Gorilla, iDesign, a whole bunch of others. So anyways, as you know, there are a boatload of tutorials out there, and a lot of them kind of have the same techniques. And I was thinking maybe I'd throw out a couple of tutorials that focus on things that maybe I haven't seen as much of online. So the first one I'm going to do is based on a GIF that I had created for Tumblr, and it's gotten quite a few hits. Basically, it's a projection of an eye on a plane with a plane effector, kind of making the eyeball look like it's bulging. So essentially, here's the GIF. So like I said, you've got an eyeball on a plane, you've got a plane effector making it bulge up and down. You'll notice as well that as the eyeball bulges out, there's some displacement happening based on the lightness and darkness of the image here. So let me see if I can recreate this for you. Hopefully somebody gets a little bit of benefit from it. So within Cinema 4D, I'm going to create a simple plane. I'm going to, for my desktop, I'm going to drag in a texture of this close-up of an eye. I'm going to take the eye, drag it onto the plane. And now if we rotate the plane around just a little bit, see it's distorted just a little bit, and that's because the dimensions of the original photo are different than the dimensions of this plane. So let me show you what I mean. The actual photo here dimensions are 2560 by 1600. So if we go into the plane and change that matching 2560 by 1600, now it makes more sense. And the size of this plane is bigger than I typically would like to work with, so I'm going to key in here 2560 divided by 2. Little trick in Cinema 4D, it actually does the math for you. So 1600 divided by 2, of course, is 800. So now we have a slightly smaller plane. It'll fit with my lighting a little bit better. So we're going to zoom in here. Actually, first thing is for render settings, I'm going to change the output size to, for a GIF, right? So I want it to be fairly small. So let's go by 450 by, let's try 300. And we're gonna, in the end, we're gonna want to render out all frames. In the timeline, we're gonna want this to be 30 seconds. And I like to darken these sidebars here so that I have a better idea of of what's actually going to render. So a shortcut to that is what is it, Alt V, and it brings up these options here under opacity. When you change that, it changes the opacity of those sidebars. So this is what will actually render. So I'm going to rotate this just a little bit so that we're looking at it from an angle. I'll zoom in a touch here. Basically, just want to crop out the edges of that plane. In the plane, I'm going to increase the segments up to, let's go 80 by 80. This isn't perfect, right? I'm just playing around to get it to where I want it. In display, I typically turn on the lines here under the ground shading, just so I get a better sense of, how small the polygons are for this. So next thing I'm going to do is take the plane, and you can click here to make it editable, or hit C. Now the plane has gone into an editable object. The next thing I'm going to do is apply a plane effector to this to make the eyeball bulge up and down. So the way I'm going to do that is go to MoGraph, Effectors, Plane Effector. I'm going to take the plane effector, drag it into the plane. For fall off, I'm going to change this from infinite to sphere. For fall off percent, I'm going to change that to 100. And under deformer, I'm going to set that from off to point. And now you can see immediately that that deformer, if I turn that off again, see how it change it to point. Now it's actually affecting the points in this polygon. So now within plane, I want the size of this to match roughly up with the the colored part of the eyeball here. So under parameter, actually under fall off, I'm going to change the X, move it over just a touch. The Y, I'm sorry, the Z, we'll move that out as well. And then I'm going to leave the Y here for now. What I'm going to do is under the parameter, you see right now it's making this the eyeball bulge downward, which you'll see a little bit better if I can add a camera here, which has disappeared. Add a camera. My apologies. To get this to fit into the screen capture, I had to really change the layout of my C4D. So anyways, I had a little brain cramp there and couldn't find the camera. So with the camera not turned on, now I can play around with this and not mess up my scene too much. So now if we zoom in, you'll see where this plane effector is making it bulge downward. So if I change that, now it's bulging upward. I also want to go into the fall off here and that's not really affecting that at all. In the plane effector now, if we physically move it up and down, this is where we're going to get that effect. And of course, you could play around for hours to get the bulge of this eyeball to match up with kind of the way that you see it in your head. But for parameter, let me actually adjust that a little bit more. This is becoming a little bit pointy. You know what? God dang it. I'm moving that in the wrong direction. So let's set this to 0. Let's move that. There we go. So now when the plane effector is dragged up and down, it's going to pull the eyeball up and down. Now I don't care for how pointy that's getting, so this is one of those things where you could play around for hours basically and try to figure out how to get that to not be so rounded. This is obviously not the solution with the fall off. If I bring this down, that's not affecting. Anyways, I honestly don't remember how I got that to look just right. I believe it was just a matter of how much I was dragging this up and down throughout that's what it was, so through the animation. So for right now, we're going to start at frame 0. We want the location of this plane to be down here where it is. So if we go to coordinates and we set these keyframes, and then when it gets to 15 frames or halfway through the animation, we want it to be bulging, so I'll set the keyframes here. And at 30 frames, we of course want this to be dropped back down to flat again. So there you have it. So as the animation plays through, when we save this to a GIF, that's all it's going to be is this bulging up and down. So if I turn the camera back on, I'm actually, with the camera selected, I'm going to move in just a little bit. Let's go down a little. All right, I want to get more of an angle on this so that we can see the bulge a little bit better. All right, so now within this material, let me shrink this a little bit just so I keep everything in frame. In the material, because I essentially created this material by dragging an image into this area, so it automatically put it into the color channel. Well, we also want to use this same image to affect the displacement, meaning wherever it's white in the image, we want it to affect it and pop a little bit, either upward or downward. Same thing if it's black, we want it to pop essentially in the opposite direction as the whites. And then the midtones, of course, are affected less than the whites and the blacks would be. So there's two different ways that we can do this. This image, the original image here, is pretty sharp, meaning it has a lot of contrast. You know, the lines within it are very well defined. So if we want kind of like really sharp, crisp displacement, we can just left click, drag this image over to the displacement channel and drop it there, and we have it. All you have to do now is turn on the sub-polygon displacement. I'm going to set this down just a little bit for the sake of rendering. I'll turn on my interactive render region here, turn up the quality, and now when I turn on displacement with sub-polygon displacement enabled, you'll see where it's popping the white here essentially up 5 centimeters. So if we went in the other direction, it takes the white and drops it. I kind of like the white to pop in this case. And what you're seeing here, if I bump this a little bit more, because we're using the original kind of sharp picture, you see where it's you know, the definition is very sharp. In the GIF that I had created, it's a little bit more subdued and more smooth. And the way that I did that was I took this original photo, I opened it up in Photoshop, I applied a little bit of blur to it, saved it here as the same image with a little bit of blur. So what I'll do here for the displacement channel, I don't know if this will work, but I'm going to drag this image up into there. So now the displacement channel has the same image, but it's a blurry copy of that image, and you'll see here how it's smoothed that out substantially. And I like this look a lot better. I'm also, in this case, because it is kind of a smooth deal, I'm going to turn down the subdivision level down to 1 and see. So we're still getting that pop here, but it smoothed out some kind of roughness here that was in the black. So all we need to do now is animate the displacement. And the way that I did it in the original is when the plane effector was all the way down and this whole image is nice and flat, I turned the displacement level way down to where it was almost flat. And then as the eyeball was bulging, I turned up the displacement. You of course could just leave this displacement turned up during the entire animation. You know, whatever you prefer. So for this case, when the eyeball is down, I'm going to set this to 1 and set the keyframe, and then at 15 I'll set it to, I don't know, 9. Set the keyframe, and back here we'll set this back to 1 and set a final keyframe. So now you'll see, if you watch this, as it animates through time, or as it moves through time, that displacement starts very low, moves up, goes back down. Last thing we need to do is add a little bit of reflectance to this project. As you're looking at it now, I mean, it looks okay. You know, it's got just the head-on lighting from the camera. There's nothing reflecting. There's a couple last things we need to do, and that is to add some better lighting and to get an HDR in this to really add some nice reflections. So in the Reflectance channel, what I typically do for a real basic setup is I remove the specular, I click on Add. This GGX is kind of the go-to for me right now. Turn off specular. I always add Fresnel. Right now you see how there's nothing now, right? And that's because there's nothing, it's 100% reflective, and there's nothing else in the scene to reflect off of this plane. So it ends up just being black. So you can add Fresnel which most tutorials show going in here and going to, conductor for metal or dielectric dielectric for like a glossy surface. What I tend to do is go to the layer mask and set it to Fresnel here. And based on that, now you can see this again because the Fresnel cuts back on the reflectance a bit, moves it out. Not sure on the technical aspect of that. I'm sure I'm explaining that terribly wrong. So anyway, so the next thing I want to do, even before I add any lights to the scene, is I want to add an HDR image to this. The coolest plugin that I have found for Cinema 4D to date is this sIBL loader. If you do a Google or Yahoo or whatever search for that, you'll get there. It's free. You install the plugin, and when you click on it, these are all the different ones that I have saved. So these are basically HDR images that when you select it, it's going to wrap your entire scene with that HDR. Some of them are set up with sunlight. Some of them are set up with additional lights as well. So in this case, I believe I use this really nice beach image. So when I do that, it brings up these. I'm going to leave the GI, global illumination off. I'm going to leave the background off. I'm going to pull in the sun. I'm going to bring in other lights. So when I apply that, you see immediately it lit it up a little bit more. I'm going to turn off the interactive render region. I'm going to turn off the camera. And when I pull out here a little bit, you'll see right here is the sunlight that's in this HDR scene. So when I click on the sun, general, I'm going to change the shadow to soft. With sun selected, I'm going to hit R to rotate, and I'm going to turn it here a little bit so that it's coming from kind of like top left. See how the sun here is pointing in this direction. That's where I want it. So if I go back into the camera now, and now if we render this out quick, looks pretty darn good, right? I mean, you've got the reflections here. You can see the palm tree in the back. Looks pretty darn good to me. Now if we move it to the middle of the scene, when it's bulging a little bit, and when the displacement is at a higher level, oops. Now when I do a quick render, you can see the displacement taking place as well. I'm also going to go in here. I'm going to leave it as standard because it's an animation. I've been using the physical renderer a lot, and I love that. But for this case, I'm going to leave it as standard. Set the anti-aliasing to best. Leave it at 1x1 and 4x4, but I'll change this to animation. Typically, I add ambient occlusion, but to speed up this render a little bit, I'm not. For output, I'm going to leave the settings here, all frames. For save, I'm going to save it here to my tutorial folder, and let's call it tutorial render. Because I'm going to be turning this into a GIF file, I'm going to save it as a QuickTime movie. Under options, I typically will put this at H264. Come back here, let's re-render with that better anti-aliasing. And now you can see it's the eyeball is bulging. You've got the nice displacement here. Last thing I'm going to do, I don't want to rely on just that sunlight. So I almost always set up a 3-point light system. And I personally, I have a three-point lighting system saved as a C4D file, and then I just go to File, Merge, and I bring that in. But just for the sake of demonstration purposes, let's bring in a few lights here. Oops. So first light will move like back left of the camera. We're going to set the shadow type to soft just because it renders faster. And we're going to leave that at 100%. Let's make this one just a little bit reddish or pinkish. Hold down Control, drag this over to create a duplicate of that. We change the height down a little bit, drag the intensity way down. Let's maybe turn this one a little bit blue. And let's create a third light, which will be behind the object. This one, let's make just regular white. Turn this one up just a little bit. So now we have this. We have the sunlight here. We've got a real basic 3-point lighting as well, just to add, I guess, a little bit of depth or shadows to this thing. We go back into the camera, do a quick render here. It's looking a little bit blown out down here, so let me turn this down a bit. Let me go into the sun, turn that way down. Alright, now we're seeing that definition a little bit better. So let me make sure I've got everything here before I do the render. Alright, we've got the HDR image in there to provide these cool reflections. We've got the displacement. We've got the displacement set up with keyframes. We've got the eyeball bulging set up with keyframes. So last thing we're going to do, double check on render settings. We've got this outputting. We've got this set to all frames. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the render to picture viewer. So in the next minute or so while this renders, I'll talk for just a second. Why don't if there's anything that you're thinking as I present this tutorial that you might like to see in a future tutorial, or if you have any constructive criticism, feedback on delivery style, other things like that, totally happy to hear constructive criticism, please. Personal shots I could do without. Thank you very much. Hopefully somebody is learning something from this, much like I've learned a ton from all the free tutes that are out there. So, all right, this wrapped up. So last thing we're going to do is we're going to pull this 1 second video. We're going to pull this into Photoshop and create a GIF file. So the way we do that, obviously, is open Photoshop. Which, by the way, on this new computer, I spent a little bit more, and I got a relatively small SSD hard drive. I think it's 250. Anyways, it wasn't terribly expensive, and you saw how fast Photoshop just loaded there. All these programs that on my old computer would have taken, what seemed like forever. It probably was a minute, right? But it seemed like forever just to open the damn program. Well, you saw how Photoshop here opened in a matter of about 3 or 4 seconds. So we're going to do File, Import, Video Frames to Layers. And I'm going to pull in the video file that we just created. I'm going to hit OK to bring in all of those frames, right? There's some options here where you can limit the frames that you're pulling in. And lo and behold, now we've got one layer essentially for every frame of that video. Go to File, Save for Web, and it brings up this little interface where you can change the settings in order to get the file size to where you need it. So the main ways you can do that is you can manipulate the image size. All right. So if your intent is to put these on Tumblr, where most people are looking at them on their phone, well, you don't need a huge file size, right? I mean, if you're looking at your phone, a file size or a resolution of 450 by 300 is big. It's way big enough. Another way to impact this is under the colors. The higher this is, the cleaner the ultimate image here is going to be. Let's see what I mean. If I lower this down to 16 colors, it all of a sudden gets real grainy. And you can play with this dither setting here to affect that as well. But let's go up to 128. I need this to be less than 2. I think that's the limit on Tumblr right now. So a couple of options. When this was at 256, this is above 2, I could change the image size down. Like if I put this at 400, it dropped below while maintaining this. So that's the way I'm going to do it. So if we play it through, you can see it bulging. So I hit save. I'm going to save this here as Untitled GIF. Now when I exit out of Photoshop, my apologies, everyone. If I was doing something there in Photoshop and obviously I didn't have it in the small enough on my screen for this video capture system to catch everything. I apologize if I was doing anything that was important and you missed it. So now we'll open up this GIF file, and there it is. Simple as that. It's got that kind of glossy, watery look. Again, this one of everything I've put on Tumblr, this one by far has gotten the most views, the most likes, the most reblogs. It seems to be really popular with the 420, the marijuana crowd for some reason. I think I know why, but anyways, hope you enjoyed this. Again, if you have any feedback or ideas or comments or requests for other tutorials, please do put those in the comments. All right, have a good day. Thank you much.